So today we're gonna go into a seven-figure brand audit, specifically on Meta, covering everything from pixel, ad account, creative, top-level growth strategy as a business as well. And I think this will be super valuable for your own brands. This is some of the most common mistakes that I see auditing multiple businesses weekly as a growth strategist, again, actively spending money on the platforms again, and actually working with some of the top D2C brands. So yeah, I think that will be super helpful to see how you can get some of those, quick tips for your own specific accounts. And yeah, let's actually dive straight into it. And if you're new to the channel, we all talk about how we can scale D2C brands to 7 and 8 figures. And I have some also free resource in the description if you want to check them out. Yeah, basically get more insight from the things that I'm doing every day to scale accounts to multiple 7 figures and 8 figures actually. So yeah, let's actually dive into it. So starting off with Meta specifically, in general, the biggest mistake that I'm seeing is that there is no dedicated environment for testing, which is going to be the most important thing really when we talk about scaling any DTC brand on Meta specifically, or any paid social platform. We need to have that specific testing campaign just to isolate the creative, gather learnings, build on them, and build that data feedback loop to scale more winners and obviously get back in production from the creative team. Similar concept to what's already been working. Now, specifically on this one, it was slightly nuanced, but it was pretty much the same bottleneck. They had one testing and scaling campaign, so they treated the testing as scaling as well. And they use CBO, which again, from my perspective, it's very tricky when you're actually testing creative because obviously Meta will naturally start pivoting most of the spend into the ad set and the ads that have the highest engagement. And the real nugget here is like there wasn't specific clarity on which are the top winners, which are not, and which we kind of still testing them, and there wasn't that kind of difference in terms of testing to scaling, and therefore a process from testing to scaling. So account structure was a big one. I also like to obviously scale vertically in testing, but using ad set budget optimization where you have a bit more control and you can actually spend more behind what's already been working. Now, again, off the back of that, there wasn't a clear defined scale campaigns. Like I said, they have started to isolate some spend into some cost cap campaigns, but there wasn't again specific AAC plus campaigns focusing on scaling those winners. And there was also some kind of cost cap scaling campaigns, which again, cost caps are one of those are like a bit inconsistent. So it kind of depends really on the kind of goal of yours. If you're just focusing really on kind of profitability and not to care too much about volume and actually growing top line, yes, you could potentially start using them. Although I have to say that most of the time that I see those work is either as a layer on top of my highest volume campaigns. So just treating them as the core soul campaign that was scaling, it's gonna be very tricky. Unless we are again a brand that probably in the kind of low end 6 figures where you just need that kind of efficiency when it's getting spent. Now a big one, and I'm seeing this, believe it or not, very often is customer exclusions. There was no customer exclusions. Again, this is actually even more important than testing any kind of interest or having multiple ad sets than used to be. It's basically how we now help Meta to kind of target people apart from the creative, which is obviously going to be the biggest thing. Is we need to get some of those audience segments completed, like both the engaged ones but also the customers ones. Again, make sure to use pixel audiences, but also make sure to use some CRM lists from Klaviyo. Again, no customer exclusions here basically means that Meta is just likely reserving ads to existing customers, and therefore is reducing our kind of efficiency of prospecting and for incremental net new reach. And off the back of that, one of the leading indicators that there is a creative bottleneck is going to be frequency. And that was exactly it here. And believe it or not, it's super common. So make sure you go into column setup, select the kind of frequency metric and see what's happening. Because specifically on this one, we were talking about a 9 frequency over the last 30 days, where it needs to be like below 3 ideally. Indicating Meta again is like bucketing our reach to the same people. So basically just spending money on the same people and not growing the business, which is mainly a creative bottleneck. Again, this also goes hand in hand with the exclusions. For some accounts that likely more scaled up, go a bit more strict in terms of my exclusions, and I've seen great results recently. So, for example, going more strict on the website visitors that I'm going to be excluding, and maybe some kind of email list as well. Again, things that I can basically just force Meta to just spend money on kind of new people. But creative is going to be the biggest bottleneck here, and the biggest thing that we need to optimize to start, improving our account frequency. Now, another big thing here, which is also very common, very easy to fix actually, is budget allocation. If you click on the account settings, and I'll have a kind of screenshot somewhere here, you'll see how much of your total spend is stuck in the landing phase. And this ideally needs to be around 20 to 30%, because this means that basically we are exiting the landing phase, we are allocating budget correctly to give Meta as much data and as much budget to find our customers as possible. And on this occasion, was around 55%, which is actually not too bad. I've seen this all the way up to like 70, 80%. Now, again, a big caveat here is it will depend obviously on the brand that you have. I'm conscious when you're just starting out and you're spending maybe like 10 to 30K, 40K a month on Meta, and you have a high AOV product, they will maybe be hard to just be about 20%. But we need to start optimizing our budget allocation and start thinking about how we can consolidate further to give Meta or everything that kind of needs. Now, there was also another thing here which is very important to me is, and I call it here attention to detail, which is around the taxonomy and how we name ads and ad sets and campaigns to get the data that we want as a media buyer, as growth strategies, as a business owner, basically, to iterate, optimize our account, but also iterate mostly on a creative perspective. Again, I'll put also an example here of my kind of recommended one. But again, it's going to be very, very simple. Just make sure you have everything you need to properly and fast get data back. Now, the other thing here, there was also a bit of an issue with like multiple pixels and source being used, because there was a store like like an extension to the main store, which again I recommend everything that's just different URL, even if it's obviously pretty much the same niche or the same kind of deep business. So in this scenario, just for context, it was basically the same kind of product but targeting kids. So it was mostly the demographic parents, and yeah, that was just a completely different creative strategy and shop and everything. So basically, and kind of product. So I basically a different store requires different account, so we don't need to mix everything there. And the other big thing that you can easily also fix is take a look at your um, attribution settings, and because roughly on this account, 35% of the conversions are viewed through, indicating limited incrementality. Again, when this percentage exceeds to 25%, we are talking about a potential overestimation of true performance from Meta, and we want to switch that back to a click-based attribution. So 7-day click, for example, to start getting incremental results back. But this is super important. So again, the what we recommend is also pretty self-explanatory, but the key things here is going to be account structure, setting a proper ABO or testing environment where we set specific hypothesis on an ad level, we make progress in creative test, and we make progress in the account itself. Account structure, we start pushing some of the spends behind what's winning. After a point, this needs to be probably around 70 to 80%. And then around ad budget distribution, there was also a lot of offline creatives. Again, we are going to cover creative very, very in depth in a bit, but there was a lot of offline creatives that were taking most of the spend in the core campaigns. So again, bottom funnel offline is not going to be the way to scale. We need to start somehow monitoring these and distribute spend into more top of funnel concepts, which we need to start bringing in. Now, another big thing is international expansion. Now, there was a lot of countries tested, to be honest, but there were also some kind of countries that obviously were not like strong enough or scalable enough to make sense to distribute spend. So again, also when you're going and going beyond your main market, you need to think about first of all having a kind of consolidated setup, an AAC plus, target maybe like 5 to 6 countries are like your top countries. See what's working the best and isolating that first by attacking this into a separate campaign, separate creative strategy, separate everything. And this is super important because like you can really waste some money essentially if you just targeting multiple countries or like worldwide targeting. Um, Now off the back of that, in terms of pixel, which is also a thing that I think most like business owners or growth strategists don't really take a look at, and I did, it's something definitely that I didn't do, is go to your pixel. Like for this specific account, there wasn't the advanced matching wasn't on. So basically, essentially, you're again limiting how much data you pass back to the pixel, and even from a kind of server side. And make sure this toggle on is super simple to do. It just quickly check that, and yeah, it's probably going to give you a lot more data to work with and obviously optimize the algorithm much better. And the last thing here that I saw is there was, if you test the whitelisting, which is also something to do, high recommend, you also need to have start scaling this as like a separate strategy. And this also goes into allowing further scale and incremental reach through other people. But for example, on this occasion, they were mixing together BAU with whitelisting, which again, Meta would probably pivot to the highest engaging ones. So we need to start also separating those into a separate kind of environment. So let's go into some of the screenshots here so you can see and you can spot the problem very easily. Now, as you can see on the other account here, obviously um, for privacy reasons, obviously I'm not going to be sharing the exact campaign names, the account and everything, but you can see there's multiple campaigns live in the account with the utilization of the CBO testing environment, which again is what we don't want to do because obviously then we don't have a bit of control in terms of budget. So again, the action point, if you are doing this, although CBO can be great at scaling sometimes and really segmenting as you start scaling a lot more and you have a very strong creative pipeline, some of those creative winners into a core campaign for testing, and I really like it. Especially, not that it doesn't work, but at scale, you need to have control of the creative and the creative learnings basically. Now, you can see here what I said before in terms of like the percentage spent in the learning phase. You can also see this in the ad account itself. This is, I think, on the CBO testing campaign. Again, we need to make sure we consolidating as much as possible. We get this number down to 20-30% and really implement a clear AAC plus scaling campaign here focused on high volume audiences alongside the ABA testing and then ABO testing that I mentioned. This has been the recipe for success here. Now, frequency also raised to spot. Just put your audio on your columns. You can see here there's multiple campaigns with like above 3, 4, 5, which is a bit concerning. So again, we need to make sure we work a lot on our exclusions and our creative mostly. And then what I just mentioned around the international expansion as well, you can see that there's some countries like Brazil or Israel, not obviously to hit on those countries, but they're not that strong from a scalability perspective, especially for the specific products. So you need to have a bit more thoughtful how you approach that as well. Name conventions, you can see very rudimentary, very um, basic ones. I think there's a lot more, and again I'll put some here so you can see. So we have the best possible visibility to streamline reporting and learnings here. And here is the wrong naming, but what I want to say here is around customer exclusions and net new incremental reach, which is the most important thing. Again, as you can see, there's no breakdown of like existing and new customers and where Meta is pivoting our spend basically. And also there's no audience in the audience segments piece. So make sure you have your list ready to add there, and then you probably see the breakdown coming through after a couple of days. Last but not least, again, like I said, pixel, very simple, just toggle it on. And again, this is what I'm exactly was referring. Make sure you have the advanced matching. Again, it just limits the amount of customer data being passed to Meta, which again, less data won't let us do more money or more conversions. And going into what I can recommend, top level, obviously, each account is a bit different, but it's a very consolidated campaign structure where most of the spend is on what's winning, which is going to be on a core Advantage Plus shopping campaign with 10 to 15 pieces of creative. Again, post Andromeda, I've been experimenting with a lot more creatives. Now, a huge caveat here, each creative that I'm at that is active, it needs a lot more spent so we can make sure better is distributing spend there. And another big caveat here is what I've also been testing lately is obviously compare, again, this also depends on the kind of spend level, but as you grow on the spend level, like having one campaign, one ad set with all your winners. Probably not all your ads will actually get spent. So I've been testing a lot more with CBO, having just different ad sets with ad spend limits. So we also try to force spend across different ad sets, and this seems to be working also very well. And it's really, really high depending on the account. Something to also test. Initially, though, one campaign, one ad set, all your winners, and I think that's the recipe. And then have a creative test and dedicated campaign where I test all the creatives. Again, I have another video going more in depth around creative testing, but I might reshoot it because I have some really good learnings recently from some kind of recent tests. But yeah, essentially the idea here is identifying the winning concept and angle, and just promoting into the core campaign, but also scaling vertically what's working. So I'm also like on an asset level, scaling that, increasing the budget 30%, 20% every couple of days. And I scale both horizontally, so adding to another campaign, but also vertically within the same campaign. Now, last but not least is the retargeting piece, which is it kind of depends. On some brands, I actually don't even do retargeting anymore. On some where maybe they're a bit higher AOV, or at least just to kind of test the concept again, is I do a stacked retargeting audiences, so medium funnel and bottom funnel. I don't really segment those unless I have again money to spend and I have proof of concept. But this is very low budget, maybe like 5 to 10% of the total budget. And there is a case depending again on your brand and your customer size. Maybe have another ad set up with some of the lost customers so we can re-engage those as well. But yeah, make sure to tackle this with like again testimonial and bottom funnel concept, but also whitelisting. Also does very well here as well. And I think people mostly use it for prospecting, which is amazing. But also you can see the value of like putting a bit more thought in terms of the retargeting piece. Now, a huge caveat as well here is this is just one product. If you have multiple products, this is going to be duplicated. If you have multiple countries, after a point, this will also be duplicated. Now, don't start straight away just duplicating this and have like 10 campaigns. Again, the highest spending campaigns that have like maybe like three to four, five, three to five campaigns max, but obviously under one SKU. So again, make sure you scale the hero product first. That's what I'm recommending here. That's what I've seen working the best, and then moving into other kind of products. Now I'm going to be a bit more in depth in terms of the testing strategy because I know there's going to be a lot of questions. Like I said, I will do a dedicated video on that. But the idea is like creative testing should be much more controlled. I think people do is out this and people and by people I mean myself included. In the past, I would just go some creative, launch it, whatever sticks, it sticks, and there wasn't that data feedback loop process. So the idea now is what I've seen work the best is I control the kind of variable on an asset level, or the main thing that I want to test. So this is gonna probably be an angle, a concept, or a creator, or a format now. And each concept has like 5 to 15 variations. So there's different hooks, maybe different call to actions, maybe different lengths. Usually the hook is going to be the most important thing, especially now post Andromeda. We want to have it visual, distinct, creative. And then I promote some of the winners. The most important thing is in any creative in any scenario, I sit down with the creative team, either on the agency that I'm working, but on a kind of consulting basis that I'm doing, and we go each week and see what's working and what we need more of basically. And a few things that also help is like make sure we putting obvious exclusions on prospecting, make sure I'm allowed to test every day of the week, and not every day, it's the same day every week, and I use 7-day click to avoid under over attribution. And also a big mistake that I'm seeing is like set enough budget on an asset level, set enough budget on an asset level. So that basically means minimum 2-3x the AOV, so we get data fast basically. Now I'm gonna touch a bit on creative. Obviously, this is gonna be completely different story, but I think this is some key things here that I'm seeing time and time again. As you can see, and I'll just put a screenshot here of the soft metrics, thumb stop, hold rate, and outbound click-through rate, all below benchmarks. You can see the kind of rough benchmarks, obviously depending on your own business and kind of industry. But the key things to take a look at is like if those are below benchmarks, definitely a big area to focus on. And I will start with hooks because obviously this indicates that more people are seeing the ads and more people are actually clicking through the ads and going to the website buying or checking out services. And two is going to be frequency, which means I'm not refreshing enough creative and I'm not doing net new stuff to reach new people, or I'm basically doing the same concept over time again, which is something I'm seeing a lot now, again, especially post the other meta update. Basically, take a look to take a look at your account and see if your ads are very similar. If they are, you need to start getting some more diversity there. And then what I kind of recommending for this prospect here, and what I recommend for like most of the businesses that I work with, is just a segmentation in terms of the funnel messaging. So make sure we are speaking to different people in different ways. So problem aware, solution aware, unaware people, and really leaning into the educational angle if your product actually supports that. And then start also bringing more diversity, both from a creator perspective, persona perspective, but also from a purely framework perspective, because this is what we need now. Since the recent updates, it's just more diversity here, basically. And just to sum it up again, framework in intentional personal testing is something that I don't really see. Make sure you go back to kind of researching your customer, and like on this scenario, they're basically going very, very deep on just one persona, not just, for example, some other kind of personas that they can explore. And you can just instantly unlock a net new audience just like that. A few other things that also people think missing is just inclusion of like any trust elements that you have into your statics or your videos. Just make sure you basically boosting social proof and building trust at all times. Because again, this is going to help with like click-through rates, going to help with like click-to-purchase ratios, and overall just basically getting people to kind of purchase. And overall, just to kind of sum it up, some of the action points from this audit that you can just take straight away is in terms of like the account structure, ABO testing to set up creative tests, establish a clear AAC plus campaign for scaling one ad set, consolidate to start exiting the learning phase and giving Meta what it needs, review any geolocation expansion plan or a product expansion plan. Make sure you absolutely have the foundations on the core products and the key market before going into that, and really establish a clear strategy between what's profitable, so the unit economics, define a profit scaling plan to reach, make sure you know your kind of targets, all stuff that I pinpoint on this audit, because I think it's just so easy to just a lot of stuff and just go nowhere. Specifically, then around creative, make sure you create net new concepts each week, you iterate it each week, and build a creative feedback loop with clear naming conventions to track learnings and make more money essentially. Focus on hooks, focus on diversity, and then last but not least is just strengthening the kind of data here. Make sure you have all the kind of best practices, so exclusions, 7-day click, and advanced matching on your pixel. All these are going to be super important for you to just maximize your kind of spend and your budget, and obviously make the most kind of revenue possible. So that's it. That was the video for today. Hope you really enjoyed it. Again, some of the stuff are very, very practical for you to just go into your ad account and just implement straight away, and hopefully you'll see better results. Again, I'm gonna have free resources in the description so you can check them out. But yeah, thanks a lot for watching this, and see you in the next one.